He had been looking for me. For 6 months, he had been looking for me, and he only knew my first name. I found that out approximately 45 minutes into the most surreal dinner of my life, after I had somehow made it through introductions without my voice breaking, after I had sat down across from David Chen at my grandmother's table and eaten half a plate of food I could not taste at all. Here is how it came out. Lola, because she has absolutely no sense of subtlety and zero interest in developing one, looked across the table at David's father Richard and said, "Your son has been very eager for this meeting. He told you he has been hoping to find a nice girl to settle with, yes?" And Richard Chen, who clearly had not been briefed on the need for discretion either, said, "Oh, more than that. David mentioned he met someone last year at an event in the city. He never got her full name. He's mentioned it more than once." The table went quiet. I kept my eyes on my rice. And then David very quietly, very carefully said, "Dad." Just that. One word. But it was too late. I looked up. He was looking at me. And the expression on his face was the most honest thing I had seen all evening. It was embarrassed and open, and something else I wasn't ready to name. "Maya," Lola said, watching us both like a chess player who just moved her queen, "do you have something to say?" I said, "I need some air," and I walked out to the back porch. He followed me. Of course he followed me. We stood in the dark for a moment, the party noise muffled behind the sliding glass door, and then he said, "I want you to know that I didn't know it was going to be you. When my parents suggested this arrangement, I had no idea." "But you knew Amaya," I said. He was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. I knew Amaya, who worked in urban planning, who had a sister she clearly adored, who could name every Coltrane album in order, and who was gone before I woke up. I turned to look at him. The porch light caught the side of his face and he looked exactly the way I remembered him, which was deeply inconvenient. "I looked for you," he said. "I'm not going to pretend I didn't." I asked Carla, she said she didn't know which Maya I was talking about, which I later realized was her being protective of you. "She told me," I admitted. "I told her to say that." Something moved across his face. Not anger. Something quieter. "Why?" And I didn't have a good answer. Not one I was ready to say out loud on my grandmother's back porch with our families 10 feet away arguing about wedding dates in Tagalog and Mandarin simultaneously. So instead I said, "This is insane. You know this is insane." "Yes," he said. And then, almost to himself, "It's also kind of remarkable." I went back inside before I agreed with him. The following 2 weeks were a special kind of torture. Our families moved fast. Lola and Richard Chen apparently had 30 years of friendship and 30 years of planning to draw on, and they were not wasting any of it. There were dinners. Multiple. There were phone calls I was CC'd on like I was a project being managed. Jess thought the whole thing was the funniest and most romantic event in human history and was zero help. And David texted me. Not about the arrangement. He texted me about things. An article about a new transit project in the city because he remembered I worked in urban planning. A question about the Coltrane album order because he said he'd been thinking about it. Small things. Careful things. Like he was building something one brick at a time and he wasn't in a hurry. I made myself not respond for 3 days. Then I responded to all of them at once at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night, which I told myself meant nothing. The next family dinner, he arrived before me. I walked in and he was already at the table, and he looked up when I came through the door with an expression so unguarded and warm that Jess, standing behind me, actually whispered, "Oh, you are in so much trouble." She wasn't wrong. But here's the thing I couldn't shake. Here's the thing that kept me awake at 2 in the morning staring at the ceiling. He was being so careful. So deliberate. Like he was very aware that the situation had all the power and he was trying to make sure I didn't feel like I had none. And I didn't understand why. Players don't do that. Men who are fine with a one-night stand and move on don't do that. So I asked Jess to do what Jess does best, which is find out everything about a person using only the internet and sheer determination. What she found made me sit down very slowly on my kitchen floor. David Chen wasn't just successful. He was the kind of successful that came with a reputation for being almost aggressively decent. His colleagues talked about him like he was the person you called when things went wrong. His company had a whole program for, I'm not making this up, mentoring first-generation employees. He wasn't a player. He had never been a player. Which meant the night we spent together had meant something to him too. And now I had to figure out what to do with that. Because there was a part of me, a terrifyingly large part, that was starting to want to stop running. But then Lola sat me down and showed me the venue she had already shortlisted, and the terror came flooding back. Because wanting someone and being told you have to have them are two very different things. And I had spent my whole life refusing to be told what to do with my own heart. Because wanting someone and being told you have to have them are two very different things. And I had spent my whole life refusing to be told what to do with my own heart. But then Lola showed me the venue she had already shortlisted and something in me went very, very quiet. Not with dread. With something I wasn't ready to admit yet. Stay tuned for the next part.